am the founder of KO8 Studios and the director of performance of A Teenager, the opening sequence, and I just wanted to introduce my director's cut of my film opening, and I hope you love it. I worked really hard on this project, and I'm thankful if you're looking at the behind the scenes, and I'm so thankful for putting in the time and energy to watch my work. Thank you. And throughout my director's cut, I will be talking about how my projects challenge conventions and how my project represents social groups or issues. My title sequence mostly follows conventions of psychological thrillers or drama genres, but I have some deliberate tweaks so it doesn't feel like every other moody student film trying to be deep. I wanted to feel like it was genuinely a very psychologically charged film. The mise-en-scene throughout the entire film is supposed to be minimal, controlled, and slightly bleak. This is to fit the typical conventions of thrillers or psychological dramas where the environments reflect psychological tension. This lack of clutter keeps the focus on the characters' emotions, which is what I wanted to highlight to sense that overall emotion, and is very genre appropriate. At the same time, the simplicity challenges the big budget conventions that rely on elaborate sets instead of spectacle. It leans into the more realistic and realism to draw out that raw emotion. Now on the cinematography, though it is my first project, I tried to really focus on this. Using close-ups, tight framing, and many other things, I wanted to find the cinematic equivalent to invading someone's personal space. This is a common feature in psychological genres because it builds up intimacy and the sense of discomfort. If there's any handheld shots or slightly unstable movements, which is the flashback scenes, it reinforces this realism and the emotional instability. Again, matching conventions, but avoiding overly polished Hollywood styles. The lighting is low-key and natural. This fits the more psychological conventions by creating shadows and ambiguity. It also suggests realism rather than stylization, which slightly challenges the exaggerated lighting often seen in many of the mainstream films today. The pacing is slow and deliberate, which is to build the tension in the opening sequence. I definitely avoided these fast cuts and flashy transitions because I wanted it to feel like that. And it challenges modern editing techniques, which are trendy today and very chaotic for no reason, instead of building that deep atmosphere. For sound, I had minimal ambient sounds, and that did a lot of the emotional work here. It's very conventional for suspense genres where silence equals this tension. When it's non-diegetic music and subtle or absent, it challenges the usual heavy dramatic scoring and makes the scene feel more realistic and very uncomfortable to the audience. The title sequence at the end is a simple, clean, minimal font, and it fits this genre because it doesn't really distract from the overall tone. The title is gradual or subtly appear on the screen to reinforce that tension and uninterrupting. When representing the social groups or issues, I wanted to look for shadows and deep feelings. So typical genre representations were young people and vulnerable or in danger, mental health, or as in unstable mental health and even threatening, and then social isolations as something extreme or control. Now this is definitely what I wanted to focus on in this film. And then my approach was to challenge stereotypes by humanizing the subject rather than exaggerating them. So I wanted the character being isolated to be shown as relatable or realistic to really bring in that audience, and I don't want it to seem dramatic or exaggerated. I did this by portraying individuals not as the problem, but the environment and social pressures as this issue. Now, the lack of dramatic action focuses the film on the internal experience, which challenges this genre's overall use of reliance on external conflict. Now, the social issues represented in this are themes such as isolation, loneliness, mental health, and identity or personal struggle. Instead of sensationalizing these, like many psychological thrillers do, I wanted to ground them to make them more meaningful and less exploitative. Now, my overall judgment on my title sequence is that I use my conventions very well, such as lighting, close-ups, slow pacing, minimal sound, to really challenge the conventions of these like psychological thrillers and dramas to avoid that over-dramatization and focus on realism and reduce spectacle. I also represented these social groups thoughtfully, avoiding stereotypes, emphasizing human experience over shock value to really broaden my audience. Overall, I tried to make this intense and emotionally packed, making the strongest film opening sequence I could have with what I had. Thank you for listening. Okay. We just picked the outfits and took the pictures for the wardrobe for the blog post. And we just finished filming. It took forever. And we're cold. And we're gonna go get some food. And that's a wrap on day 1 of shooting.